Okay, so it's 7:02. Let's get started. Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar titled The Roadmap to Unification of the Korean Peninsula, One Nation, Two States, Three Governments. This webinar is organized by the New England Korea Peace Campaign and the Massachusetts Peace Action. My name is Kumju Lee Armstrong. I am the co-president of the New England Korea Peace Campaign and a public school teacher in Brookline, Massachusetts. The New England Korea Peace Campaign is a growing movement of Korean Americans and their allies in New England working to end the Korean War and sign a peace agreement. Thank you so much for joining us today. Today's webinar discusses a path to reunifying the Korean Peninsula. The Korean Peninsula is the only nation divided by the Cold War. The Korean people lived as one unified people for thousands of years before foreign forces divided Korea. In 1945, Koreans had been under Japanese colonial occupation for 35 years, and instead of receiving their liberation, they received the division of Korea. After the defeat of Japan, the United States didn't know what to do with Korea, so two young State Department officials tore a page from the National Geographic and literally drew a line across the 38th parallel. North of it went to the Soviet Union, south of it went to the United States. Then the Korean War broke out and did not end with a peace agreement, but a temporary armistice, a ceasefire. Since then, the military demarcation line has been separating North and South Korea. The Korean War has been going on for 70 years, and the division has been continuing for 73 years on the Korean Peninsula. However, unification has been the long-cherished dream of 80 million Koreans. Can Koreans overcome division and realize unification? Today, we'll hear the insights of an expert on the unification of the Korean Peninsula. Our guest speaker is Professor Han-sik Park. Professor Park is University Professor Emeritus of International Affairs and founding director of the Center for the Study of Global Issues at the University of Georgia. He has been recognized globally for his efforts in the pursuit of peace. Professor Park was honored as the recipient of the prestigious Gandhi King Ikeda Community Builders Prize in 2010 for his commitment to finding peaceful solutions to challenges arising from the Korean Peninsula. He has visited North Korea more than 50 times since 1981. He has instrumental to President Jimmy Carter's visit to North Korea in 1994 to avert military confrontation, and President Bill Clinton's visit to Pyongyang to free detained American journalists in 2009. He has also developed a lifelong commitment to peace studies and published many works regarding peace and social transformation. This webinar will last for about an hour. Professor Park will talk for 35 to 40 minutes, and then we'll hold a Q&A session for 15 to 20 minutes. While listening to the talk, please write your questions in the chat. We'll go over the questions after his lecture. Without further ado, please welcome Professor Park.
Right. Thank you very much. What can I say? I really like a more informal exchange of views. Just a monologue from my point of view is so dull and it's not really interesting. So save your questions or remarks so that we can discuss it after my initial session for about 35, 40 minutes. Now, we all want peace, but we don't know what peace is. I know what peace is not the absence of conflict. It is not the absence of conflict. Peace is harmony, and harmony is diversities and differences meet together and create at a higher level oneness. That is harmony. From diversity to oneness, that's harmony. That means inter-Korean relations, if we are going to have peace at all, we have to create oneness out of North and South Korea. How can we do that? Not through military means, but through dialogue and communication. Dialogue and communication on the issue of reunification is very, very rare to see, even in South Korea, let alone North Korea. And dialogue is the exchange of values rather than exchange of facts. Exchange of facts may be needed for scientific study of anything, or peace in this case, but dialogue is the exchange of ideas and the exchange of values, so that North and South Korea, we have enough value differences so that we can indeed develop high-level dialogue, and if we achieve peace, that is harmony, that peace is going to be huge one, a very stable one, probably more idealistic peace may come from such diversities, North and South Korea. So it is really hard, even in the United States, people working on peace, getting together with different ideas. When they have different ideas, they don't speak with each other rather than dialoguing. So this group, Massachusetts, is a far more civilized place in terms of peace study quality. A person that I admire greatly is living there at MIT, Noam Chomsky, I'm talking about. So, we need to create oneness out of diversity. How diverse North and South Korea? Very diverse. Maybe 2 or 3 points, let me point out. North Korea is socialist state, South Korea is capitalist state. Coming along with the difference is that North Korea does not have private property. Practically everything is owned collectively by the society, not by the government officials, but by the community as a whole. Whereas in South Korea, it's individualistic society and private ownership. So that North and South Korea, we have great deal of difference in terms of our ideologies, even on those 2 points. Socialism is predicated on the principle or the aspiration for equality, whereas capitalism is predicated on liberty. So in the history of mankind, these two opposing values have never found commonness. So it's time someone has to find a common element or harmony between equality and liberty. That can be the Korean people, because they have experienced such extreme diversity, and if they find they should find harmony between equality and freedom. It has to be Korea with Korean heritage and experience. Korean people are well qualified to pursue more effectively harmony between equality and liberty. Now, with this background, let me go into my main topic. When you have such difference, we cannot find easily harmonious middle point. So when you have extremely different opposition values, then we cannot pursue cooperative relationship outside the logic of dialectics. I think dialectical logic is exactly made for that. Thesis, antithesis, and the two harmonized thesis and antithesis will become synthesis. How can we make arrive at synthesis? Through communication, by finding out each other's strengths and weaknesses. In dialectical logic, in fact, every system, North Korea, South Korea, each has its internal contradictions. So internal problems will be there. We have to understand internal problems of North and South Korea, understand and accept the positive aspects of their opposing values. So here, in pursuit of peace, peace will not be, as we have seen last 70 years, will not be possible without the pursuit, at least the aspiration for unification. A lot of people say peace is a necessary condition for unification. It may be, but peace cannot be perfected without at least effort to unify the two sides. In other words, we have to see antithesis and thesis, North and South Korea. The relationship is mutually dependent. Without North Korea, South Korea cannot find its identity and vice versa. That's very important for us peace scholars to understand. So if we understand that, we should communicate, we should exchange views when we have differences. That applies to America as well as the world itself. So there, the dialectical synthesis will become a synthesis made out of the harmony between thesis and antithesis. That's dialectical. To unify the Korea must be a synthesized harmony. North and South Korea, each one will be, one is thesis, the other antithesis. And the unified Korea should be synthesis. So in that spirit, if synthesis requires thesis and antithesis, unification requires North Korea and South Korea. In that sense, the spirit behind the June 15th agreement, Kim Dae-jung and Kim Jong-il, the agreement was indeed a profound one. They agreed to accept the differences and not only accept, understand and get the other side positive light rather than demonizing and criticizing all the time. So we need to look at somewhat differently what North Korea is, and vice versa, what South Korea is. That is a very important element of dialectical logic. Now, much more importantly, dialectical logic requires the working of internal contradictions. North Korea has internal contradiction, South Korea has internal. Let me speak of South Korean internal contradiction, distributive injustice, and class polarization. That is South Korean problem and dilemma. And North Korea is on a right track in terms of pursuing equality, but it can improve in terms of creative aspects of human beings. So each North and South Korea need to develop better, more perfected version of thesis and antithesis, rather than avoiding each other. We should accept each other. That's why June 15 agreement is a profound one. So with that, we have to, I said, understand the North Korea to the extent that we have to think without North Korea, South Korean unique characteristics cannot be revealed, and vice versa. Without South Korea, all the problems, and without that, North Korea cannot find its own identities. So we have to have a mutual dependence in terms of existential justification for existence. We have to do that. That's the important one. The opposite thing, a dialectical logic or dialectical perception, you have to think contradictory logic, to use our term. And that is what makes white is black. What makes male is female. What makes big is small. So the quite opposite concept is the motivation or the cause of existence of the other value. So we have to value North Korea accordingly in the context of dialectical logic. Once we have that, I think finally my thesis is we need to have one nation with two states and three governments. It may sound a little confusing, but the topic is confusing topic. So yes, we have one nation. Obviously, one nation, people within a nation shares a lot of similarities, language to begin with, historical heritage, and history, perception of history, and the position in international arena. All these we need to think in terms of one nation. One nation, but we have developed because of partition of the country and because of the Cold War era, Cold War culture, global culture. North and South Korea developed different ideologies. Socialism came in response to capitalism in the history of socialism and versus capitalism. First, we had historically West as well as we had a capitalism first, private ownership and competition market economy, and all that, but overrun by yet higher value, that is equality. Without equality, liberty doesn't mean much because freedom is not free. So here we have, to understanding North Korea, we have to understand the history of communist ideology or North Korean, the evolution of North Korean ideology. We have to understand that. For the same token, we have to understand the South Korean, the origin and evolution of South Korean capitalism. These scholars must do that. It's not that hard, but it's not that simple. It's complicated, but it's simple. So we should understand the North Korea the way it is. North Korea is a socialist system, and our version of socialism, as it is labeled, our version, meaning 주체익, that self-reliance doctrine, 주체익 주체익 socialism. It's quite different from Marx-Leninism, even similar but more difficult, more different than people's democracy of communist China. So we need to understand the North Korean version of socialism very accurately, precisely. That is part of peace study. In order to communicate with North Korea, we have to understand them, strength as well as weaknesses, and vice versa. So in that sense, North and South Korea, we have to accept the way they are. The way they are very different. The way they are, because there's no way of putting these together. You cannot do that. So North and South Korea, keep them the way they are. That's what June 15th agreement was all about. So keep North Korea the way it is as a socialist and self-reliance socialist system and people's democracy. The way South Korea is, it's unstable capitalism with a lot of internal contradictions. As I said, I mean, namely distributive justice messed up. South Korean societies, basically, economically, it's a class society. It's not classless society. So that it can use some external input. Socialist insights need to be incorporated in South Korean capitalism, and in a creative way, North Korean socialism may be even better, more improved. So then we have a much important topic. I said, yes, these two governments, but there's no formula to put together socialism and capitalism. We have to create a third ideology. In our unified government cannot be smaller South Korea or smaller North Korea. It has to be an entirely different one. That's what I can envision. So North Korea will contribute with its values, its positive policies and so forth. South Korea will do likewise, but it has to have different new ideology. When we try to develop a unified Korea, that means we are proposing a separate political system. North Korea, a political ideological system, South Korea, political ideological system, and unified Korea. We should have, it may be, that's the job of peacemakers in the context of Korea. We have to develop an ideology that can be accepted by both North and South Korea. Is it possible? Yes, it is possible. So we need, if we have an ideology similar to South Korea, North Korea will not accept it, it will not even look at it. And vice versa. South Korea even more so because of national security law, national security regime. Because of that, South Korea cannot even think about North Korea. The age-old national security regime, should be dismantled in South Korea. That in order to dismantle that, the Congress must and people must push the government to abolish the national security regime. And also this kind of separation, why, despite all the agreements and the declarations since 1972, we have had 5-6 agreements designed to develop unified Korea. But how come we haven't been able to see even an inch of development? Why is that? I can quickly give you the answer. First of all, people meaning leaders of South Korea and North Korea, did not understand what peace is. Peace is a conflict resolution that is maybe essential beginning foundation, but peace is the absence of conflict. That's wrong. So because of that, we have been pursuing not peace, but security. Security is competition for arms race, competition of military strength and economic capability. And trying to blindfold each other from a South Korean point of view, blindfold North Koreans and overseas us with the ideology of redness. The red came from the United States, as you know. The red, 빨갱이, came from the United States. In American history, in the 40s, even before that, we had anti-communist ideology very strongly in, especially where you are living in New England, very strong anti-red. So it's called Red Scare doctrine. Was developed there, and the concept of red being demon, devil demonized, that was practiced not only in Washington, but more profoundly in Korea, South Korea, that is. So in terms of internal contradictions, unification, peace effort must begin now and here, not wait until third government develops and here. And if we do that, South Korean people must eliminate the unification, the security regime altogether. The sooner the better. Now we have anti-Yun government demonstrations and campaigns, but they have to be very specific. Number one thing they have to do is get rid of the security regime, security law. So after that, then of course you need to have more communication, more exchange of much more active exchange at level of civilian side, because the government, North Korea doesn't have civilian, but you can find civilian elements in North Korea too. So we have to have a more meaningful exchange of ideas. So the third government should be one where ideal society may be developed. Ideal society. It's make a third government a beginning, a blank sheet, withdrawing a government from the very beginning. So ideal government in terms of environment, in terms of distributive of basic needs, distribution of basic needs, in terms of medical care, in terms of equality in basic needs and wants. So we need to develop different versions of human rights, versions of ideological perfection in the context of third government, that is unified North Korean government. Who will do that? North and South Korea together must do that. We don't have anything going together. South Korea has a lot of campaigns, democracy, peace, and everything, unification, everything, but they are not dealing with North Korean people. It is important. Yes, it may be difficult with this kind of government of the United States. But even Americans, we cannot travel to North Korea right now. This has to be changed. It's the American policy. America is not immune to sins of partition and separation and lack of peace. America is very important to have a right kind of leadership, right kind of ideology, right kind of democracy, and then other governments like South Korea may emulate correct kind of democracy, not corrupt kind, broken democracy. So that's what we can do, people living in the United States and American citizens. We have to make America more admirable and perfected version of democracy. We have to do that. So South Korean unification, North Korea, that Korean unification is not, the obligation is not limited to the Koreans. Americans do have historically, morally, ideologically, the obligation to develop the better democracy and lead South Korea in more desirable way. So with this, I think I may have gone, my body feels about 45 minutes.
Okay, so only 32 minutes passed. So you still have time, like 8 minutes.
Good, good.
All right.
Yeah, I can do in terms of what we can do. South Korea will have to do far more seriously independent politics, independent from the United States. I'm not saying every country must be independent from each other. What I do feel is very strongly American influence in South Korea, and in fact, before that, Vietnam, before that, of course, throughout the world, in Europe too. It's wrong. The imperialistic foreign policy or cultural education policy must be abundant, in Washington, in America. That the world is the polarized world is over. 1991, the collapse of Soviet Union coincides with the collapse of Cold War. The Cold War era is gone. America is trying to bring back Cold War. What are we doing with helping Ukraine? Try to help NATO. NATO is a Cold War remnant. We cannot bring NATO, that any kind of security alliance, back to the world. So the world is not going to have good guys, bad guys anymore. I might, I saw some reverend there, and this is America, a Christian country, deeply Christian country. Christianity is good. Love your neighbors and make peace and so forth. Everything is good, except some aspects of Christianity polarize the world. The world is looked at in terms of good guys and bad guys, chosen people and abundant people. So in that way, the world is looked at in terms of different groups of communities. That's why the United States, in time of war, committed to very vicious mass murders of civilians. In Vietnam, in Korea, I visited the North Korea city called Sinchon, where mainly American soldiers, followed by South Korean soldiers, they killed in one community 35,000 civilians in North Korea. We don't know. Even experts don't know. I visited there twice. 35,000 people murdered by American GIs primarily. And I got the information, the commander of that operation. I got the American name. I tried to find out the identity from the Defense Department. That kind of person was not found. I don't believe that. So, unfortunately, American politics today is 2023, is run by not common sense democratic logic anymore, by lies. You know, Donald Trump was the creator of big lies. Didn't he create that? So the lies really underlie American politics to the extent that we don't know what to believe or who to believe. That's the quality of American democracy that used to be very admirable. We have to restore better democracy at home, that is the United States. So, so the massacre, because of that kind of activities and results, North Koreans and a lot of South Koreans too have very critical perception of the United States, especially military politics. So in my view, America knowingly or unknowingly did commit original sins in the form of two. One, racial discrimination, that is beginning with slavery system. Two, militarism, that is related to looking at non-white people somewhat inferior. So that is a white hegemonism lead to that. So white hegemonism and military industrial complex, and these are constituting so-called deep state, and deep state is running America, increasingly more so. We have to not only know North Korea, but also we have to know South Korea, and we have to know the United States better. So I'm pretty sure you have a lot of questions. I'd like to discuss, open up. I made some provocative points. I hope I did, so that we can have a meaningful, more constructive discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Professor Park, for your insightful and powerful lecture. So I'm going to just go straight to give you some questions. So there are a lot of questions in the chat, and let me see. Okay, so this is a question from Reverend Yoon. What do you think of the U.S. geopolitical strategy, which controls the government of South Korea? How does South Korea restore her independence and sovereignty to engage in the dialectical dialogue with North Korea?
I think that someone has to, we all contribute to forming global public opinion against the wrong policies, wrong politics of the United States. The only power that can affect America is world public opinion. So that especially the Christian community, Christianity, the role of Christianity in America is tremendously profound and large. So we have to have internal discussions based on what I said in terms of American problems, original sins, and so forth. I think we should lead to better constructive discussion. So I'm sorry, Reverend Yoon, the answer to that is very, very simple. We have to move something that affects the United States. But things like the military industrial complex, we cannot move. But the world public opinion may be able to move. So it is wrong to strengthen the NATO in today in Ukraine issue, considering that NATO is security alliance. It is not economic. NATO is not EU. EU is economic cooperation, whereas NATO is security alliance. It's a military organization. We should dissolve all these. NATO and South Korea, the United States alliance should be dissolved. And of course, new military alliance, including Japan, should never be tolerated. So that public opinion is all I can say as being important pressure to the United States, correct the American relationship with South Korea.
Okay. There is a question about U.S. policy against North Korea by Robert. Isn't DPRK a victim of red baiting from Harry Truman to Ronald Reagan, then colonial terrorism from Reagan to government George W. Bush with sanctions?
Yeah, American policy toward North Korea is grossly unfair, and we have to examine important policies. Say denuclearization, for example. You know what I think? I think the United States does not want to denuclearize North Korea. Why? It can maintain economic benefit by selling military weapons to South Korea. And with the justification of deterring China, it will strengthen military preparedness of Japan as well as South Korea. So we have to criticize that kind of policies. And South Korea current government is totally incapable of doing anything constructive for the Korean national interests. So we have to, our own allies, the United States and South Korea, the alliance must be dissolved. For that, I think the withdrawal of American troops from South Korea is a logically rational thing to do. Then, of course, a lot of people will object that because of personal interests or territorial conflict, but we need to have self-reflections in terms of American policy toward Korea.
Great, thank you. So there is a question about the United Nations role for Korea unification. So could the United Nations bring North and South Korea together to form this new third government? What do you think?
The United Nations is a wrong international organization. It is basically American organization. If America does not want, it cannot do anything. You have China also as a player, so much more complicated, much more difficult for the United States to lead the United Nations the way it wants anymore. It's hard, but the United Nations is not right organization to deal with North Korea.
Okay.
So the world, it will be much more diversified, not two worlds. So American or this Biden's policy toward trying to make good guys, bad guys in Europe and Africa, I think it's all misguided policy. So we should be critical of the United States before we are critical of other countries.
Okay, so so this is a question regarding U.S. militarism. So what independence can be with the U.S. military occupation that keeps growing in Europe and Southeast Asia? So this is not really about Korea unification. So and can I ask some related questions?
Sure.
Okay, so there was a question about Jucheism. So is there like a South Korean version of Jucheism?
Yeah. Regional alliance. It may be Southeast Asia, it may be Korea, it may be Europe, NATO. Regional military alliance has outlived history. We should get away from military alliance. What does military alliance do? Kill people. When you kill people, American policy, some people are worthy surviving, some other people are destined to be killed. That is international gross racism is there. An ideological or intellectual, epistemological racism is there. So the world consists of 200 some countries. Each of these countries will have self-interest, pursue self-interest. We should allow that, encourage that, so that bloc-based international order should be replaced by each country's independent pursuing its national interest. We should allow that. International organization can pop up and encourage that kind of new development. So scholars must sit down and think about proper kind, just the kind of world order. In my view, bipolar world order became uniform. One polar, the United States, that world order. Now, we are not going back to bipolar China, US world order. China is not going to be part of security alliance. And I was born in China, studied, examined China in terms of their perceptions, their ideas, all these decades. But I don't think China will be inclined to support bipolar system, hegemony system at all. China will interact with each and every country independently. So I think the world system, bipolar system became unipolar system, and then we are now confusion. I think we'll have no polar system, it seems to me. All the countries are independent. And that kind of world I can envision coming up. We'll see if that's the case, how each regime, this North and South Korea, should develop their foreign policies. Much more complicated thing.
So I just checked the time. So with the limited time we have, I'm afraid I have to miss many of the questions. Actually, we have a lot of questions in the chat. So yeah, we have only a couple of minutes left. So today's webinar is aimed to understand the situation on the Korean Peninsula and contribute to the path to peace and unification. So I think it's time to take action. So there are two things I'd like to ask for your support. First, HR 1369, the Peace on the Korean Peninsula Act, was reintroduced by Congressman Brad Sherman in the House on March 3rd, a couple of days ago. The bill is very important for promoting peace on the Korean Peninsula. It mainly includes the end of the Korean War and the signing of a peace treaty. And it also includes the lifting of the travel ban to North Korea. This will open the door to the reunion of separated families. So as of today, there are already 20 co-sponsors, including 4 New England region representatives. So to pass this bill, we are working toward a goal of 100 co-sponsors. So we are collecting signatures from people to urge representatives to co-sponsor the bill. So I am sharing the link to the petition for the bill in the chat. Okay.
Yeah, I think that's a very clever, very desirable legislation, and I support it wholeheartedly.
But I need to get the link for everybody, but it doesn't work. Let me try the link again. So did you get the link? Oh, yes. Okay, you got, okay, thank you. Thank you. All right, so, okay, so please go to the website and send your representative a letter urging them to become a co-sponsor. And there is one more request I'd like to ask for. So the US South Korea joint military drill is scheduled to happen from March 13th to 23rd. The military exercise includes preemptive strikes and decapitation operations against North Korea. This is raising military tensions and the threat of war on the Korean Peninsula. Please participate in the petition to suspend the US ROK joint war drills. I share the link to the petition in the chat. Okay. So, and actually, no. Okay, so I will need to, okay, give you this. Okay, so did you get the petition? Oh, okay. So, Hee-kyung, do you have the link to this petition, the statement endorsement? I cannot get the link. Okay.
Well, Hayden put one in the chat.
All right, so somebody put in the chat. Okay, here we go. All right, so yeah, your support and participation will be a great help in making peace on the Korean Peninsula. Okay, so we are working together to bring peace to Korea. So it's time to wrap up our webinar today. Thank you so much again, Professor Park, for sharing your in-depth knowledge and insights. This has been a rich and productive webinar. I'll be sharing a recorded video of this webinar with you later. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining the webinar and for your tremendous support for Korea Peace.
I thank you very much. I'm glad that I met you people from New England and maybe around the world. And I'd like to see further questions and discussions in different format. That's fine. If you need me to elaborate any of these points, contact me or contact Kunju. Will be able to comply with that one. And also, we have a monthly meeting that is my sarangpang. So Korean people will know what sarangpang is. So that I want you to come in. I want you to make my recent books available for you, and will be honored to be read by you. So thank you so very much this evening. Thank you very much. Take care.
Thank you. I'm hopeful that we Koreans can achieve unification by creating a third system that Professor Park was talking about, right? That is neither socialist nor capitalist. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. Thank you.